Okay, our second account is what we call the break-even chart. And over the next 5 to 10 minutes or so, we're going to learn about fixed and variable costs, and what break-even is and how to calculate it, um, what its limitations are though, and we look at how to work out break-even using a table, a graph, and a formula. I'm going to spend most time on the table and the formula, and your teachers will pick up the graph during lesson time. Although I will touch on the graph as well during this little presentation. Okay, so first thing to notice, we've got two types of costs. We've got a fixed cost and a variable cost. So variable costs are your production costs. Let's imagine I make desks. I'm sitting at one now, a wooden desk. And obviously, the more desks that I make, the more wood I've got to buy, the more parts I've got to assemble, the more my costs are going to go up. So they're my variable costs. They vary with the amount that you make. However, a business has got lots more costs to pay than just its production costs. So there's lots of costs that have got nothing to do with production that stay the same no matter how many products the business makes. So I've got to pay my bank loan, my mortgage, my rent and my rates, my gas and electricity, my advertising costs, my salaries for my office workers. These are my non-production costs, but all of them need to be paid if my business needs to run. So I've got fixed costs in one hand, I've got variable costs in the other. If I put the two together, of course, what I'm left with is my total costs, fixed and variable added together. So if I have a look at this little table and just think about those definitions for a second. Buying raw materials, well, that varies, doesn't it? The more desks I make, the more materials I've got to buy. Telephone rental, office worker salaries, advertising costs. Well, none of those things go into making desks, but they all have to be paid if I want my business to run. Electricity and gas would normally be an expense, but somehow this business has figured out exactly how much electricity goes into the production line, so that's a variable cost. Stationery, rent, vehicles, those things don't go into making desks, but you do have to pay the production workers, and the more desks you make, the more you're going to have to pay those people to make them. So variable costs vary with the level of output. Fixed costs do not vary with the level of output. Okay, now break even. Imagine you told to a friend and you said your friend went to the amusements over the weekend. He said, "Oh, how'd you do?" And he or she said, "Oh, I broke even." You would immediately realise that what that meant is that they didn't make a profit, they didn't make a loss, they covered their costs. They spent a tenner and they won a tenner. They broke even. That's exactly what this is in business too. Break even is the point where the business neither makes a profit or a loss. It just covers its costs. And all you need to know to work out the break even point for any business is what's its selling price, what's its variable cost per unit, and what's its total fixed costs. Okay? Now, let's have a look at an example here. I'm going to do it using a table, first of all, have a look at the graph, and then we'll look at it using a formula. So let's imagine this business, it sells the desks for £30. Each desk costs £10 to make, and every month the business has got fixed costs of £10,000 for rent and bank loans and all the rest that have to be paid. All right? So what we can do is we can make this table. Every month, the business can make a maximum of 1,100 desks. No matter how many desks it makes, it has to pay £10,000 fixed costs for its gas and electricity, its office worker salaries, its stationery, its rent, and all the rest of it. Okay, but as it makes more desks, its variable costs begin to rise because we know that each desk costs it £10 to make. So if it makes no desks, its variable costs are nothing. If it makes 100 desks, its variable costs are 1,000 because 100 times by 10 is 1,000. And the more desks it makes, obviously the more variable costs are going to rise. So we've now got our fixed costs and our variable costs. So we can add the two together and that gives us our total costs. And as you can see there, total costs range from 10,000 to 21,000. So look, we're halfway there at least already, aren't we? Now, we now need to work out the revenue side, the money coming in. Okay, well, we're going to sell each of these desks for £30. But if we don't sell any desks, then clearly our revenue is nothing. if we manage to sell 100 desks times by £30 is 3,000 revenue. And as we sell more and more desks, the revenue increases. Now remember, what we're looking at here is how many desks do we need to sell to break even? What's the break even point? When we neither make a profit nor a loss, when your revenue and your costs are the same. And what I can see here then is if I'm able to make and sell 500 desks, my revenue and my costs are both £15,000. I've broken even. If I don't manage to sell 500 desks, you can see that I'm making a loss, can't you? That negative figure there, because the cost, the money going out, is greater than my revenue. But after I break even, the more that I sell, you can see that I'm making a profit because the revenue, the money coming in, is greater than the cost then. I know, though, that I need to sell 500 to break even. Now, there's another concept here called the margin of safety. Because in real life, I don't really want just to break even. I want to do better than that. So the margin of safety is the difference between how many I think I'm going to sell, the actual output, and the break-even point. So let's imagine that I thought I was going to sell 800. Well, we only need to sell 500 to break even. So 800 minus 500 is a 300 margin of safety. I could be 300 desks out and I'd still be fine. I'd still break even. Now, we can then put this into a graph. And again, I'm not going to spend a lot of time on the graph in this video, but as you can see, if you plot the revenue line, the more you sell, the revenue goes up. You put the fixed cost line in. Fixed costs don't change no matter how many desks you make. So it's a horizontal line. And then total costs rise, of course, the more desks that you sell. The break-even point is where the revenue and the cost intersect. That's how many you need to sell to break even. And on this diagram, if I draw a line up here, it's a little bit out where that Excel plots these graphs, but it would be 500 desks, or in this case, CDs. Now, I'm going to jump through this bit here, but just to pick up a couple of key points, okay? In class, you're going to learn how to plot these lines. There's only 3 lines we need, where revenue and cost are the same. It's breaking even. This business knows that it now needs to sell about 550 products to break even, and it needs to make a revenue of about £11,000 to cover its £11,000 costs, okay? If it manages to make more than 550, then its revenue line is above its cost line, it's making a profit. But if it doesn't manage to sell 550, then you can see here the costs are above the revenue, it's making a loss. So think about kind of break even now then. It's really useful for setting your prices. It's really useful for deciding how many products you need to make. It's really great to help you decide how much profit or loss you're going to make if you've managed to sell a certain number of products. And it helps you to work out the impact of reducing your costs or increasing your prices. Okay. The downside to break even means that it is based on estimates. It assumes that I'm going to be able to sell all of the products, and this is the biggie. If I can't sell the products, then no matter how many you make, then I might not break even. Okay. Anytime any cost changes or change my price, I've got to recalculate the break-even point. Well, that's a bit of a pain. But if you imagine if I'm Tesco and I've got 10,000 products on my shelves, am I really going to work out a break-even table for all of them? Of course I'm not. Okay, so it's really good for when a business has got a single product, but it becomes more complex if the business has got many products. Okay, final thing now then. There's a fast way. This is often the way the exam will ask you. Fast way of working out the break-even point. And what we do here is we get the fixed cost figure and we divide that by the difference between the selling price and the cost per unit. Okay, so here's some examples here, which we'll work through them. Okay, so the fixed cost is is a typo there, is 100,000, not 10,000 as I've mistyped. But we sell the product for £50. Each one cost us £30 to make. So 100,000 divided by 20 means that a break-even point is 5,000. I've got to sell 5,000 products to break even. This one here, fixed cost is 20,000. We sell them for 15 quid each. Each one costs £10. So each one contributes £5. 20,000 divided by 5 is 4,000. Got to sell 4,000 to break even. This one here, fixed cost of £5,000 this time. We sell them for £2.50. The cost is £1.50 to make. Each one contributes £1. 5,000 divided by 1 is 5,000. And so you see this pattern again and again and again. Okay, and that's break even for you.